Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our third week, our third class today. So we're so happy to have you. We've got some good things in store for you today. Now, before we jump into today's content, let's review your practice assignment from last week, which was one of our Notice and Be Curious assignments. And last week, we asked you to notice and be curious about when you found yourself naturally experiencing self-connection, what we called last week a personal green zone experience, where you felt just that you could come home to yourself, so to speak. And we talked about that could be when you're walking, listening to music, reading, dancing. We gave all kinds of examples and just asked you to pay attention to when you might drop into that kind of space. And also we suggested that you think about what is happening with your natural communication system, your body, your heart, and your mind, when you're in that space, that personal green zone space. So just take a moment to reflect. If you had an opportunity to notice that. Where were you? What were you doing? How long were you there? And what was happening? What did you notice in that space about your body, your heart, and your mind? So I also want to talk a little bit about this. So let's hear from Greg. Greg, what did you notice or what made you curious this past week about your own personal green zone experience?
Yeah, I had a busy week, very busy week, and there was definitely days where a lot was hitting me all at once, phone calls and texts and deadlines and all of these things. And I noticed how it became harder for me to remember to connect in with myself the more that was happening. And then on the weekend, I was able to take a day and go. I mentioned rock climbing and are talking about personal green zone. I was able to go rock climbing just at a local park here, and it was so clear. Everything we talked about was so clear. There I was, and I honestly I didn't even do very much. I was there by myself, and I just enjoyed moving and being outdoors in the sunlight and the feeling of the rock, and just the fact that it's not an intellectual thing. It's not something I have to think through.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a huge relief, actually. It was really a couple hours of getting to open up.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I'm just going to share one example of what I noticed because it really fits with our topic today. I noticed how when I'm in certain conversations with certain people, I feel like that becomes a natural green zone for me, in that I feel just connected, safe, able to be myself, not monitoring what I'm saying or how I'm saying it. It just feels very
Right.
freeing and very natural. So I appreciated recognizing the importance of others as a green zone. And I know you're going to talk a lot about that today. So
Sure.
I'll stop there and let you take us away today with our content.
Great. Yeah, that's a great place to start in with our content today. So I want to say that, in class one, we had an overview of the journey of mindful communication and where it can take us. And in class two, then we spent a lot of time looking at how we connect with ourselves and how crucial that is. And I want to acknowledge that I think for some of you, you might be a little impatient. Like, okay, when are we going to get to the things that I wanted to take this class about, which is often having to deal with difficult situations with others. And, of course, that's what we all want to know. And so there is a little impatience. Let's get to it. But I want to actually say that it is crucial, this whole process. Why do we spend so much time talking about connecting with ourselves? I want to say that there is no way, I want to say in a very definite way, there's no way that I can connect with somebody else unless I'm connected here. We said this before, but I have to reiterate it. It's so important. If I'm not connected here, I'm not hearing. If I'm not connected in my heart, I can't intuit what's going on in terms of the emotional experience of others, and I'm not getting my own responses to what is being said. And if my mind is not open, if I'm not connected with the openness of my mind, I can't think clearly in terms of what somebody's saying and the implications of that, right? So I have to be hooked in here to sort out the problems out there. And so that's why we've spent a bit of time on this. And, I want to say it's time well spent. So please don't worry. Please just, come along with us. And today we're going to start to get into our relationships with others. And I think it will make much more sense since we've talked about connecting with ourselves. So today, what I would like to do is do a little drawing, again, like we like to do. And let's talk about a topic that is quite important. And this topic is called open, closed, and in between. So think of a doorway, an open doorway in this case. And, in an open doorway, it's a blue door, evidently. In an open doorway, things can come in, right? Light comes through. And, fresh air comes in. And, when we're talking about openness, we're talking about our open state that we've been getting to in this class. And here, there is room for someone to come in. Right? And someone with disproportionately large legs is able to come in. And that's the thing about open. Actually, here, why don't I, to make more sense here, I'm going to make that green. We'll get to that soon, why I'm doing that. So that's an open door. And when we talk about open in this context, we're talking about connection. We're talking about, am I connected to my body, heart, and mind, my natural communication system, which automatically connects me with others, right? So there's openness. And then, in contrast, you can think of a closed door. And what is the case with a closed door? When the door is shut, where does that leave us? And here, nothing's coming through. Oops, let me go back. I want to make that a little more shadowy here. Nothing's coming through. there's just a sense of being shut out. And so, here I am. And with my disproportionately large legs, here I am. And I'm shut out. What is the feeling of being shut out? Why is this so painful to us? And, our question is going to be, why does this happen? How do we get shut out? And I want to say this is not just shut out of a conversation or a relationship. How do I get shut out of my own body? How do I get shut out of my own mind? How do I get shut out of my own heart, right? So, closed. And then a crucial thing to talk about, and this is, I think, one of the great innovations of this particular approach, is the idea of in between. Actually, here I'm going to make that a little more. Let's take that back here. Let's make it a little more closed, because in between is really about being not very open. And this is the kind of situation where we're not sure which way this door is going. Is it going to open or is it going to shut? And here, there's some light coming through, a little bit. And there's also a lot of shadow around. And there's only a little bit of air coming in, not a lot. And here, I might peek around the corner. And I'm not sure. Am I allowed in or am I not allowed in? And we're going to call this in between. So these are three fundamental experiences. We're really talking about fundamental states within ourselves and also between ourselves and others. And we can be fluid with that, the idea of open, closed, and in between. We can think of conversations. We can think of experiences. I could be closed all by myself in a room just because of how I'm relating, how I shut down the conversation within myself. I could be, we could be in a conversation that's very open. And then maybe it becomes an in-between conversation. So this is a fluid metaphor. But I want to go a little further with this and use an image that's going to help us simplify this. So this is one of the fundamental metaphors in mindful communication. And this is the symbol of the traffic light. Now, why do we use a traffic light? We use a traffic light because it's something that you're all familiar with. I mean, hopefully. I don't know, maybe some of you live in the interior of the Amazon and you've never seen a traffic light. That would be interesting to find out about. But for most of us, this is quite familiar. And the thing about traffic lights is, I used to live in Los Angeles. And in Los Angeles at rush hour, there are literally millions and millions of cars. And they are going every direction possible at high speeds. And traffic lights are a way to coordinate everyone. Not perfectly, obviously. There can be accidents, but accidents are often from, if we're honest, misreading the signals. And so, generally it works. Generally it works. And let's just clarify what we're talking about here, right? This is a pretty simple signal. Very simple. How could it be so simple and yet be effective? And, you might think, well, I'm a good driver. Like, I don't need this simplistic stuff. Like, I know what I'm doing. I'm actually kind of a pro. Is there somebody who's a good enough driver that they don't need traffic lights? Now, I know there's places that actually don't have traffic lights, and traffic just has to adjust itself and sort itself out. But that's not the most pleasant situation. It's not very effective, and it's kind of painful. And let's just lay out our metaphor in a little more of a direct way here. So what are we talking about with these three signals in terms of our conversations and in terms of ourselves? So let's start with the green. The green is the simplest, and we'll say, open. Connected. Mindful. And mindful, again, it sounds fancy, but it just means you're paying attention. It just means you're with what's going on. I mean, it's not fancy. It's the opposite of fancy. In some ways, when we get too fancy, we lose this. And then we'll say present. Right? What is it like when somebody's present versus when they're not present? Which do you prefer? So then with the yellow light, we're going to say in between. And here we're going to really identify states. Anxious, confused, uncertain. And here I really want to emphasize also very harsh towards ourselves. I can't fit it on the screen, but that's also a critical part of the yellow light. We're harsh towards ourselves. We're very unmerciful towards ourselves. And there's a feeling there's something wrong. We're going to get into that later. And then finally with the red light, closed. And mindless. Frozen. Frozen in our body, frozen in our heart, frozen in our mind. And not present. All right, so this is just a little overview for now. And, you know, part of what we want to do actually is not just to talk about this, not just talk about abstract models that we'll get into more detail on later. So this is just an intro. But actually, we want to experience these and then come back and talk about them more. So Chris is going to lead us in a mindfulness exercise now. I'm going to turn that over to her.
All right, thank you, Greg. And I want to add a personal note here that this beautiful, simple metaphor of the traffic lights was the thing that really drew me to studying with Greg and with others in our community about this particular approach to mindful communication. Why is that? I've been studying communication stuff for a long time and doing coaching for many, many years around communication and conversations. And I found the simplicity of this model to be so effective from the get-go in working with people to understand these patterns that happen in communication, particularly that yellow light. So I'm glad that we're going to be talking more about that. That's a really important, I think, source of empowerment for us if we learn how to be with it. So with that, let's move into our mindfulness exercise. And we're going to stay with this theme that Greg introduced so beautifully to us, of this idea of open, closed, and in between. And to do this, we're going to be paying particular attention to how we are receiving information from our natural communication system, our body, our heart, and our mind, and how that's a very dynamic process. Now, let me just give a little bit more context before we actually go into the exercise. We'll be checking in briefly with each of the three, I'm going to call them channels today, body, heart, mind channels of our natural communication system. And we're going to just do a momentary check-in with each channel to notice, does it seem open, closed, or somewhere in between? Now, let's do a little simple exercise to sensitize us to this. And I invite you to do this with me if you're open to. I'm just going to use my hand as our simple sensitizing exercise so that we can see and feel what I'm talking about. So with our hand, we can open our hand, right? We can curl our fingers and we can close our hand. And obviously, we can have it somewhere in the middle. Now, even as we do this exercise, we know there are varying degrees to how this works. For example, I can open my hand, but if I really put effort and stretch and strain to open it farther than it wants to go, it can feel uncomfortable. So I ease up a little bit on it. Similarly, when I close my hand, I can squeeze, and tighten around it so hard that it becomes uncomfortable, even down into my forearm. So I learn how to work with that and lighten that to find the just right space. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of what you might consider as we move into this exercise. Now, one other thing, I know these words, open, closed, and in between, are very subjective. At the end of the day, you are the only one that knows what open feels like to you, what closed feels like to you, and what in between feels like to you. Now, I'm going to offer some words in our exercise as just sort of a descriptor to kind of help us point to these states. But if my words don't match your experience, go with your experience. Just forget about the words that I'm using. Okay, you are the expert in your own experience. All right. So with that, take a moment to find a comfortable position. Maybe take a deep breath, let it go, and find a position that's both relaxed yet alert. And your eyes can be closed, or you can be looking down with a soft gaze, your choice. Now bring your attention to your physical body, sitting here right now. Does your physical body seem open to receiving input from all that you're seeing and hearing? Or does your body seem somewhat closed, sort of tensing or tightening around your sensory experience? Or does it seem somewhere in between, open and closed? Just take a few moments to notice that physical body, open, closed, in between. Okay, good. Now let that go, and let's turn our attention to our hearts. Take a moment to notice, in this moment, does the heart, that channel where you receive emotional input, does your heart feel open and receptive to your emotional experience right now, whatever it might be? Or does it seem closed, like it's pulling back or kind of protecting you from emotional experience? Or somewhere in between? Good. Now you can let go of that. And this time, turn your attention to the channel of the thinking mind, where our thoughts live. Right now, in this moment, does the thinking mind seem open? Like allowing thoughts to come and go freely as they wish? Or does the mind seem closed, like thoughts are sticky, firm, fixed? Or is it somewhere in between? Now, in our last few moments of this exercise, let's take time to notice all three channels together. The dynamic nature of body, heart, and mind communicating in this moment. We can think back to our technology metaphor we've been using. Might seem like the lights of these three channels are blinking as they come online for a moment or go offline for a moment. It's very dynamic. Something is always happening somewhere. Just be fascinated by that. Our natural communication system is communicating to us all the time. We simply need to slow down and pay attention. Okay, good, good. You can let that go now and gently transition back to our course, opening your eyes if they're closed. Giving yourself just a couple of moments to recalibrate. Now pause and reflect. How was that for you? What did you notice? What are you curious about? So Greg, I'd like to hear from you. How was that for you?
Well, it was very much like you described, of things kind of flickering. Um, you know, I would really notice, for example, I noticed I twisted my ankle when I was rock climbing a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at a sensory level, I was feeling that part of my ankle and just noticing that it wasn't just the tightness of twisting the ankle, but there was also like muscular nervousness. I really felt the in-between quality there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would notice thoughts coming up around that, and including curious thoughts about, you know, exactly what we're talking about. And so those were kind of floating around, but they had a more open-ended quality.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was, you know, little sparks of having to pay attention to teaching the class, you know, and what's coming next and all of that. And it was actually, it was here, I should show this. Chris sent this to me and I really appreciate it. You know, this sense that they're happening in little flashes. They're not, you know, all at once. And I was really feeling that, Chris. I really appreciated you sending this to me and getting to play with it, and just knowing that this is kind of how it goes. This is exactly what my experience is like.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think, you know, we've been pointing to flashing lights, I think, since our first class. And I think that's just such a powerful way for us to think about our experience, just flashing. And that's why with our technology language, thinking about things coming online and going offline, but it happens often very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's that momentary quality, having to tune in moment by moment, which, you know, as you were talking us through the meditation or mindfulness, you know, just seeing those little sparks happening.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Greg.
Yeah.
So, you all know by now, one of the ways Greg and I like to bring this material to life in our classes is through role plays. So we're going to do a couple more role plays for you today. Again, don't judge us by our acting ability, but we at least have fun putting these together, and we hope they serve some purpose to you. So we're going to start with a role play, more of our technology version of the role play, that'll give us a chance to kind of pay attention to this technological connection disconnection and how that happens, and how the lights, the conversational traffic lights might be happening. And then we'll go from the technological role play to the human role play. Right. Okay, action. Hey, Greg, can you help me with my computer? Oh yeah, sorry, I know I'm in a hurry today. I'm getting ready for a Zoom meeting. I'm trying to pull up some videos to show in my meeting, and I can't get these videos to play on my browser. And I know you're so good at this kind of thing. Could you help me see if we could figure this out?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I think I have an idea of what's going on. So the thing
great.
is to go to your
Greg, I think you're breaking up. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, I wonder if this is part of my issue with my computer. Oh, Greg, I think I lost you totally.
And I think that will sort it out. So if you just flip it, for whatever setting it's on, flip it to the other one.
You're not going to believe this, Greg, but
yeah,
you totally cut out as you were giving that explanation. Your screen froze and then it went black altogether. So I didn't get any of it.
All right. Well, shoot. I guess we'll just have to try maybe later in the day or something.
Oh, thanks for trying. I'll figure something out.
Okay. All right. Talk to you then.
Cut. All right. That's role play number one, when it's technology that's the issue. So pause and think about that as you watch that. How did you feel when you started noticing Greg not coming through in a stable way, when his connection was not clear? And how did you feel when it was clear? It's interesting that even in watching a role play, simple role play as part of a class, our body doesn't know the difference. So oftentimes in these kinds of exercises, our body is responding in a similar way to how it might if this were really happening to us. So let's move now to the human version. So we're going to do a similar conversation where my technology is not working well and I reach out to Greg for help. But the problem this time is the humans involved. Okay, action. Hey, Greg.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, I'm having this computer issue. My videos are not playing on my browser, and I'm going into a Zoom meeting here pretty soon, and I wanted to play a couple of videos. I wondered if you could help me out with this, because you're good at this kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. I just have to do it pretty quickly here. Busy day, but yeah, okay.
And let me just say before we begin, I am really a beginner at this tech stuff, Greg. So, you know, baby steps, and no easy language.
No problem. All right, probably the start is actually like if you open up your terminal application and go in there. We're going to check your bandwidth. So like, let's go in like in terminal. I want you to let's just do some basic commands. So let's ping. So like we'll do like ping like -i 0.5 and then your IP address, like put it afterward. We'll get a reading of how that's going. Your IP address over there, I think it's like 255.67.163.5. I'm pretty sure it's .5 or maybe .8.
Greg,
something like that.
I'm not following you here. I'm sorry, I'm confused.
What,
I'm not getting what what you're asking me to do.
which part? Do you need me to repeat that? I can repeat all that too. Is that
Yeah.
which part is hanging you up? Are you,
Uh, like I lost you right at the beginning,
okay, all right.
but I was embarrassed. I didn't want to.
It's, yeah, no, it's all right. I forget you're really starting, like you're really a beginner. You're really starting from zero. So I need to, let me think it through a little bit. Okay, so like terminal, can you get to terminal? Like, do you know where terminal is or?
I don't know. I
Okay,
don't know.
shoot. All right.
You're using terms that I've not heard before.
All right. Let's see. I'm just thinking through. Time is really short today, so um, let's see. Okay, so go into your applications folder, and if you go down to down you like utilities, it's in the utilities, and then just trying to think about how we're going to do this quickly. I've got a meeting coming up here, so
You know,
uh,
I feel like this is not working right now.
what
Maybe
what's not working? Which
I'm just not following you. I'm sorry. I'm not following. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm stressed. I just am not following the directions. So why don't we just forget about it and I'll figure something out. And I know you've got to go and I've got to go. So thanks for trying.
yeah, Chris, I'm sorry. Like I think I'm having kind of a crazy day here, and I am a little stressed, and I think um, I hope I didn't like take that out on you. I think maybe I kind of that got into how I said what I said,
I
and
appreciate you saying that because you didn't seem yourself. You seemed sort of impatient with me and
yeah,
yeah.
sorry. It's a little embarrassing. I just like I kind of things are hitting me from all directions today, and I feel like maybe I kind of took that out on you. I don't feel that way. I don't feel like you're a beginner. I don't care what you know or what you don't know. I probably just really don't have time right now to do
Okay.
this. But I'll tell you what, I have time at 2 o'clock. I think with Zoom I can like take over your mouse and maybe do some of this myself.
That'd be great.
Is that
Maybe in the,
okay?
yeah, and maybe in the meantime, I'll just borrow my husband's computer for this meeting coming up. I think that'll be okay. And we can
Okay.
figure my stuff out later.
Okay. All
Thanks,
right.
Greg.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Again, I mean, I enjoy you. So anyways,
Yeah.
I'll help
All
you
right.
out later on.
All right. All
Okay.
good.
All right. Take care.
Cut. So what did you notice as you watched that scenario? Did you notice when the light was green between Greg and I? Communication was open. And could you feel either because of what you were hearing or maybe what you were seeing on my face, could you tell when the light went yellow? And could you tell when the light might have been starting to flicker red? Now, maybe you can't answer these questions about the lights right at this moment because you're just hearing all this for the first time, but keep thinking about them and see if you can tune in to what's happening with the three lights. Now you might be thinking it's hard enough to track these three lights just watching a role play. How can I ever expect to recognize them when I'm in the middle of a hard conversation? But the point of this training, this mindful communication training, is that it helps us slow down and manage our attention so that we can reconnect with our natural communication system. And we can start sensing for ourselves when our lights might be flickering, when our conversational traffic lights might be coming off and on. So Greg is going to dig in a little bit more with how this works, and hopefully this will help it all become clearer. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So when we look at these lights, these signals that we're getting, we really want to think about what they mean, you know, in a conversation. What we just saw in our role play. Not only how do I identify what's going on? Is it open? Is there a flow? Is the traffic flowing? Did it stop? And then, you know, am I trying to continue forward when the traffic has stopped? That's a problem. Am I paying attention to the be careful signal? And what does it mean to be careful? So am I reading these properly? And next class, we're really going to get into more detail about that. But just at a basic human level, how do I interpret these things? And so I want to share this little simple diagram. This was too complicated to draw it all out for you. So we're just going to look through a process here, the stages of the neglected yellow light. And this is the reason why we're going to focus on the yellow light right now, is because the yellow light is, in a way, the most important. The red and the green are easier to identify. And because they're easier to identify, they're easier for us to figure out how to steer. But the yellow light is quite tricky. So let's get into a little more detail about that. So here we are, right? You know, here I am going through my day, connected in with my body, my heart, and my mind. These little green circles are representing that. And, you know, then all of a sudden, a flower pot of the unexpected comes crashing down. And, you know, this is obviously symbolizing just unexpected situations that come up, right? That could happen in a conversation. When you say to your boss, you know, I have a great idea about how to deal with this situation. And you explain it and the boss says, no, that's not going to work. Let's move on and talk about something else. You know, this could be a situation with your kids where you say, okay, it's time to go. And they say, I'm not going. Whatever it is, right? You know, life has a million situations where this flower pot comes crashing down. And, you know, you're talking to your best friend and you realize they're not listening to you. Actually, they're playing with their phone and they're not listening. So there's all these flower pots that crash down. And the question is then, what comes up? And the first thing that comes up is a distress signal. Now, the distress signal alone is not the problem. Of course, we feel this. You know, we're not robots. And actually, it's really wonderful that we're not robots. So the distress signal comes up. This is not necessarily anything other than our open state. However, it is very, very common for us to start to lose our connection with ourselves. And that often takes a certain form, a certain pattern. And the pattern is to feel these things unmasked, groundless, caught off guard. You know, and even that alone is not necessarily a huge problem. You know, okay, you were caught off guard. Your idea of what was happening is not true. You thought somebody was listening and they're not listening. whatever it is. But then it often escalates. And you can think of this as moving away from that open state. And we move into these further states, ashamed, embarrassed, disappointed, anxious, shocked, frustrated. And you can see how our little figure is getting yellower and yellower as they move through this process. And again, it's not, it's not the case that this is a natural process. I want to say this is a learned process. We have trained ourselves to do this. And often it comes from just not being willing to be mindful and connected with ourselves about the fact that we are surprised. Something surprised us. And actually, maybe our expectations of the situation weren't quite accurate, but instead we move into these further states. And notice that we're moving kind of towards ourself. We're moving we're pointing the finger towards ourself more and more. And so then the final state that we create, and I want to say this is a creation, is there's something fundamentally wrong with me. There's something fundamentally wrong with me. This is a kind of, I want to say this is a kind of catastrophic fear that we carry around. And we don't necessarily say it in a sentence in our brain or something like that, right? This is just a feeling. It's it's something that we feel in an instant. But it's not, we're not feeling it from the outside based on the real situation. We just feel it as a kind of self-attack that we do that's actually unnecessary. It's actually not true to the situation and what's really going on. So actually, what do we need to do here? How do we work with this? And the way that we need to work with this is something we need to talk about a little bit more here. So let's take a look here at that figure, right? So let's try and capture that dejected posture that we all know too well, right? You know, it's this that feeling, and it's not, you know, it's not just disappointment with the situation. It's not just disappointment with life or whatever, right? It's this feeling that there's something wrong with me. That's such a painful feeling. You know, in some ways, I actually could kind of argue that that's the most painful feeling in life. The idea that, you know, I'm not built right. And I want to say that this doesn't make any sense. This feeling doesn't make any sense, right? And it radiates outwards. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. It kind of repeats itself. And again, if we really look at the roots of it, we're just trying to come up with a story related to, you know, why something unexpected happened. So there's two options here. One option is to go red. Right? And this gives us, we get little horns. This gives us seeming relief from this. We say, okay, I can just go outward with this feeling. It's not me that's wrong, it's somebody else that's wrong. Or it's somebody else that I need. I need to get that person to agree with me. or I need to shut that person out. And so these, in a way, you could say these are all sort of outward pointed arrows, you know, versus these are kind of inward pointed. So that's one option. The other option is actually to surround this with our green zone that we talked about. Bring this feeling of shame and disappointment and self-attack into a totally different atmosphere. And not just with what we do with ourselves, but also with who we surround ourselves with. Right? You have your people who are your trusted people. And those folks help generate that atmosphere, which reminds us who we are. And then that starts to shift this. You know, these little moments start to shift and change this feeling. And we remember and we return and we become mindful again, right? So that's the goal. That's the point here, is not to move into the red, but to actually return to the green. So that's our basic focus for today. And Chris is going to give us a little practice assignment for this coming week. Chris, go ahead and fill us in on that. Oops, I think we just lost Chris. Chris, you're back with us.
Yes, and that
We
was
lost
not
you.
a role play. Like, I really did lose my internet connection. So
We all know how
but I'm
that
back
feels.
now.
Okay, all right, great. Well, let's jump into our practice assignment. So the practice assignment for this week is that we want you to notice and be curious when you see the lights flashing in yourself, in others, on television, you know, in a novel you're reading, wherever you see those lights flashing. And then further, we're going to put a recording of the mindfulness exercise on the homepage of the course. And we want you to do that a few times this week, to rewatch that section. It's quite short. And to do it. And you can do it as much as you would like. So those are two things. Notice the lights flashing and do the mindfulness exercise this week a few times. And I want to say noticing the lights may not seem like that big a deal. You know, and maybe it seems a little too simplistic, but give it a try. And actually consider that in your life, in your relationships, at work, in your community, being able to read the signals prevents a crash, an unnecessary crash, right? Reading the signals properly keeps people coherent with each other, attuned to each other. That's what the green light is, understanding attunement. And understanding when people become disattuned, the red light, you say, aha, I know what's going on over there. That's really crucial. This is not a minor thing. This is actually a small thing that affects everything. Okay, so, you know, look for connection wherever you see it this week, and we'll see you and connect with you again next week. Take good care.